things not looking so good for Andrew Cuomo in the Empire State right now.
Yeah.
Well, at least the timing worked out for him. Did I not turn this microphone? I guess it is on.
Is it not?
Sorry, I had a different mic to use today, and it has a little different tone.
Well, we can
with
hear
it.
you loud and clear.
Good.
We got the
Good.
okay, everybody? Okay.
We haven't gotten the high sign from the control room, so that's a good thing.
Steve hasn't run out here checking your mic, so I think we're in good
As
hands.
John was offering those numbers from Siena,
Yeah.
it's all a matter of timing. To have those numbers now, not so much of a big deal. To have them just before an election last November, that's when Governor Cuomo would have been worried. And so you see the rise and fall and the vicissitudes of public opinion.
All right, I think we're going to talk about Rand Paul now and about how his view on foreign policy is going to impact him in 2016. I believe we have a clip queued up. Let's take a listen.
ISIS exists and grew stronger because of the hawks in our party who gave arms indiscriminately, and most of those arms were snatched up by ISIS. These hawks also wanted to bomb Assad, which would have made ISIS's job even easier. They created these people. ISIS is all over Libya because these same hawks in my party loved Hillary Clinton's war in Libya. They just wanted more of it, but Libya is a failed state and it's a disaster.
Hillary Clinton's war in Libya, and the way he talks about hawks, a little bit concerning, JD?
Well, I think it's going to be tough for Rand Paul in terms of trying to say that Republican Party hawks in the United States created ISIS. I don't think that is the case at all. I think ISIS obviously grew of its own volition. And I think all of those, the danger for Rand is that he in 2016 becomes like the so-called San Francisco Democrats in 1984. Jean Kirkpatrick talked about them as a Democrat who later switched to the Republican Party because she said their answer was to blame America first. Now, I understand what Rand is doing. He's taking aim at John McCain and Lindsey Graham. But a failure to specify that, if he's trying to broaden that out to others vying for the Republican nomination, I think he runs the risk of alienating the very people he wants to attract in Republican primaries and caucuses.
And I think Bobby Jindal has already come out blasting Rand Paul for these comments today as well. And I know there's a very interesting interview you have coming up on the same topic tonight on Newsmax Prime.
Well, our good friend Patrick J. Buchanan always checks in, and though Pat's got a book out now about Dick Nixon, the greatest comeback, I always think about a conservative memoir Pat wrote in the early 90s, right from the beginning. And John, you and I have talked off the air about how in the fullness of time on a variety of issues, Pat Buchanan was the guy warning us, especially about the border and the culture wars, and sadly those warnings went unheeded. It'll be interesting. You'll want to hear what he has to say about Rand Paul. That's why we want you to join us at 8 o'clock Eastern, 5 o'clock Pacific, and if you live in time zones twixt and tween, make your own calculations. That's what be one of the things
That's a safer thing to do. And actually, to make sure people tune in, we prepared a brief preview of
good.
what they can hear tonight. Let's go ahead and take a listen to that.
And I also agree with Rand to this extent. There's no question about it that the armed and the equipment in Mosul, the enormous armaments, American armaments, some of which we're bombing now, quite frankly fell into ISIS's hand because of the collapse of the Iraqi army.
Well, maybe it's because of Pat Buchanan's experience and his body of work on this topic that it doesn't sound so tinny when it comes from him. Maybe because he's not running for president, but why can't Rand Paul seem to articulate the issue the same way that Pat Buchanan can?
Because, and look,
Because he's running.
well, not only that, but it's interesting because in the same appearance this morning, Rand Paul criticizes Jeb Bush for not being conservative enough. Rand runs a real risk for broader appeal to the party. His dad had the Paul backers in the previous two presidential cycles, very vocal, very passionate, really didn't amount to more than about 6% of caucus goers and primary voters. So the challenge is, and maybe things can change, we talked about the ups and downs of politics.
Still very early.
Does Rand Paul's conservatarian approach win him more votes now? He has taken pains to separate himself from the legacy of his father. The first foreign trip Rand Paul took upon his election to the U.S. Senate was to Israel, so he would not be perceived as anti-Israel. But it's going to be very interesting to watch how he tries to navigate this. And it's just ironic when he slams Jeb Bush for not being conservative enough, and then he speaks out against what has been the commonly held preference of the party. Going to be a real challenge for him.
And of course, this opens the door for his comments about Israel that have come back to haunt him time and time again, to come back out again about whether or not the U.S. should be supplying aid to Israel, military aid specifically.
Well, the one thing you find out in Congress, courtesy of the Camp David Accords that Jimmy Carter drafted, there is a standing payment in the billions of dollars to Egypt and Israel.
Right.
I don't want to call it protection money, but basically that was part of the deal. And it said that future Congresses are not constrained. Well, that agreement basically put Congress on the hook.
Watch
More tonight.
JD.
That's right.
Tonight, Newsmax Prime tonight. Can I do it?
Sure.
8 Eastern.
Yeah.